Hi and welcome to this new sound comparison. Today we are going to compare the brand new B&O M3 to the Audio Pro T5 or C5, again depends on which version. The T5 has Bluetooth and the C5 is a bit more expensive but sounds and looks the same and also has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in, but they again sound the same. And yeah, we're just going to take a listen to them today. In my unboxing of the M3, I was quite impressed, especially under 50% of the volume. The M3 really is a great performer. It has nice smooth bass, which is very deep, and also, I don't know, no huge treble boost like you got with the S3, but it sounds rather natural for a B&O speaker. But still, I couldn't quite recommend it to you yet, because although it's a nice performer, especially on lower volumes, it still is a bit too pricey with about $300. And I just said, yeah, you can get speakers like the Audio Pro T5 for I think 199 euros or $190, and they usually tend to sound a bit better on higher or normal volumes. And in this video I just wanted to demonstrate this. Also, we are going to check them out at max volume to see which one is louder, and I think that I will also play some tracks at about 50% volume or 45% volume, just to show you that the M3 isn't only bad sounding, or not bad sounding, but that it isn't only worse than the Audio Pro, but sometimes can even sound better, because under 50% volume the Audio Pro still sounds great, just like always, but under 50% of the volume the B&O also gains some bass momentum, because it usually loses bass after 50% volume just because it has two small drivers compared to the Audio Pro. But under 50% volume it really sounds nice, and I just want to demonstrate you this in the video, and in the end I will also of course crank them up, and then you will see how much better the Audio Pro also sounds on higher volumes, so you get a nice sound idea. Again, please grab your headphones, as this is a binaural microphone recording and they require headphones to be listened to. Another information, the things you will see in a minute are just images. Many people are complaining in the comments that I'm faking the comparison because those are just images and then you are hearing the sound. But no, I'm just recording the sound normally and placing the images over the sound line in my editing program so you can see which speaker is playing. Those are not real videos and I'm not trying to, prank or fake this comparison. So yeah, don't get worried there. But now please grab your headphones and enjoy the comparison.
If I could be the wind, I could take you higher. Feel the sun, could I be your fire? I'll take you to the moon. Speed, speed racing. Ooh, I wanna take you there. Show you a fancy car. Take it slow. Can I get a witness who can testify? Don't need to mess around. I wanna be your lover, but you never
cryptic mind. Can't say I'm sorry. A twisted lie. Now this weight is a heavy load. Caught in the middle. I'm a saint with the tank. So you take along, so tell me what your aim is. You say I'm wrong, so tell me why you say it. I'm a killer with a smile. Hold me closer, play with fire. I'm a killer with a smile. Hold me closer, play with fire.
Take a breath and breathe. Inhale, exhale, this music's all that I need. Take a breath and breathe. Inhale, exhale, this music's all that I need. Filling up my lungs, filling up my lungs, filling up my lungs. Take a breath and breathe. Inhale, exhale, this music's all that I need. 5 years from I'm sly, haters talk but I never stop. Call my show, try to hold me back, but you can't keep me from the top. Yeah, I worked hard, yeah, I took chances. And this did everything they said that I couldn't. Now I got people saying I'm next. Now I cut checks for the songs I drop. Finally getting love for the bars I got. Bring it all back in love from the east. Talk on the gram, not a word when we meet. Keep that BS. They won't talk to my face, I burn this to the ground if they give me a beat. Say that I'm garbage, I guess we got beef and they envy my hunger, get pissed when we eat. Whole squad coming up with me, yeah, I'm close to the luxury. Would've blown up last year, ain't up to me. I'm living out what I deserve, but I still stress what I earn. Put it all on the table, no label, we find independent, we rise and just give it some time.
And I take you down to the burning ground. And you change me up, and you turn it around. In the wind and rain, I'm gonna see you again. In the morning sun, and when the day is, and you take my hand, and you walk with me. And sometimes it feels like eternity. And I turn the tide, I'll get back my pride, and I'll make you proud when you say it out loud. Gonna take you down to the burning ground, to the burning ground, down to the burning ground, to the burning ground.
Get down to the beat side.
So now we are done, and overall I would just give the win to the Audio Pro. As you could hear, the M3 rarely even sounded better than the Audio Pro, which in my opinion is very sad, because the M3 definitely has a lot of potential, so don't get me wrong here. What my problem is with the M3 is just the price and the tuning of it. Again, it has a lot of potential, but it really has a weird kind of tuning. It just doesn't quite sound right. I think that the Audio Pro T5 is a great reference for this, as it's almost, I don't know, neutral or flat kind of sounding hi-fi speaker, which is portable. And the M3 definitely, I don't know, does not sound similar to it at all. I think that the bass sounds quite boomy and the treble is somehow missing. I don't know, usually B&O speakers tend to have a kind of smiley response with a lot of bass, a lot of boosted lower bass, and a lot of boosted treble in the presence region at about 5 kHz. While this M3 really doesn't follow this kind of sound tuning at all. I think it has quite a boomy bass at about maybe 100 to 150 Hz or something, so it never really sounds punchy. It does have punch. I mean, the bass reaches down to 45 Hz or even 42 Hz, which is super impressive. But I think that the I don't know, upper bass boost at about 150 Hz or something really, I don't know, overplays the nice low bass from the M3. And also the treble was a bit weird sounding, while the T5 really, again, has a very nice neutral kind of sound response, which is again a great reference for other speakers and how they should sound. The M3 somehow, I don't know, sounded covered with certain tracks or something, so it really didn't sound quite right. I don't know, maybe they should have tuned it better. I think that I will do a small sound measurement. I think that I will show you in the screen right now, so you can see the Audio Pro T5 now. I think that I won't forget this, I hope so. And now let's take a look at the B&O M3. And as you can see, it definitely, I think it should have a totally different sound response. I'm not sure, I didn't measure them yet, but I'm really assuming that the M3 has a weird kind of boost at, I don't know, 150 Hz or something. And that the Audio Pro measures, I don't know, nearly flat, as it's a really nice hi-fi sounding speaker. And on normal volumes, I think that sometimes with, I don't know, very rare tracks, the M3 did sound a bit nicer, maybe a bit more full-bodied than the Audio Pro, a bit more exciting maybe, but with most tracks the Audio Pro just sounded a bit more mature, just a bit more serious, and less, I don't know, less pushed forward than the M3. It always had a nice neutral kind of sound response to it, while the M3 just, like I already mentioned, just didn't sound that right. I don't know how to describe it yet, but it just gave the impression of being, I don't know, turned the wrong way or something. They just need to fix it. I don't know, they just need to tune it better. And then the speaker is definitely comparable with the T3. I mean, bass down to 42 Hz. I don't know, one tweeter and a main driver which is about as big as the one from the T5. It should, in theory, sound as good as the T5, but they simply messed it up with the tuning a bit, and that's really sad. And there's another issue, which is the bass sometimes. With about 3 out of 10 tracks, you can hear some very weird kind of bass, I don't know, artifacts or something. It's not the typical kind of pow-pow effect which we get from the B&Os, but it's some kind of new, I don't know, invention from B&O, where the bass just sounds weird. My guess is that they push the bass a bit too far, and the driver does some kind of weird artifact noises now. Because maybe you could hear it, I think the track was called Hold My Hands or something, and you could hear in the main part the M3 just didn't produce a clean bass kick anymore. The T5, sorry, sounded totally clean, just like a small, I don't know, subwoofer or a small hi-fi speaker, while the M3 did have a bit too much upper bass. In the end you could hear that it had some nice low bass or deep bass kick, but this again was just, I don't know, drowned out by the upper bass, which they boosted, yeah, of course, they boosted it too far. And this is why you just cannot hear the nice low bass from the M5, just because they pushed the upper bass a bit too far. So yeah, this kind of bass artifact, this bass discoloration or something, just is not acceptable at a price tag of $300. I would expect them to fix it with a software update. I don't know, just turn down the upper bass to about, I think, 1 or 2 decibels or something, and then it will already sound totally clean without the artifacts, almost comparable to the T5. But like this, the upper bass is just a bit too much, and this also again leads to the bass artifacts, which you notice with very few, or not very few, but about, I don't know, 3 or 4 out of 10 tracks. where you can notice those kind of bass artifacts, and the T5 has those bass artifacts at 0 out of 10 tracks, which is of course much nicer than with the M3. So again, overall, if you are making your decision, definitely you should probably buy the Audio Pro. I'm very sad because I usually really love the B&O products, but with the M3 they didn't quite impress me. Also, both of them do not have a battery built in, so yeah, there's no advantage from one over the other, because with others you could say, yeah, this one has a battery built in, that's why it's more expensive, or that's why it sounds worse, or that's why it can justify the higher price tag. But those two both do not have a battery built in. Of course, you can order a power bank with a AC output, which I just did. I'm very excited to present this to you. And then both of them will become portable. With this power bank included, the Audio Pro would cost about $270 and the M3 would cost about $370, which is $100 more expensive than the Audio Pro, and that is just not justified in the sound in my opinion. Also on max you could hear the M3 was a bit softer, especially when the bass kicked in. It was about maybe 3 decibels softer, and it also couldn't quite keep the bass of the Audio Pro. The Audio Pro, especially with the last track, sounded very great. No compression, no bass reduction, or a bit of bass reduction of course, but no farting from the bass part. It just sounded great. It still had some really nice and powerful bass kicks, while the M3 on max volume sounded a bit like a kitchen radio compared to it. It just couldn't keep the bass kicks. Maybe next time they should implement a bass part, because if you are making a sealed enclosure, you need 4 times more power than you would need it when you did a bass part design, just like Audio Pro did it. So maybe next time B&O, maybe with the M4 or maybe B&O M3S or something, just an improved version. Maybe you just fix it with a software update, because for now I think that the price is a bit too steep for the sound you get. As you could hear, the Audio Pro sounded better with most tracks. Of course, if you are looking for a speaker for low volumes, you should maybe consider the M3, because the Audio Pro does not have a bass boost for low volumes, while the M3 sounds nice, powerful, and just really good at low volumes. But as soon as you crank it higher, the Audio Pro just catches up and overtakes the Audio Pro, of course, overtakes the B&O, and especially on high levels you can just, forget the B&O compared to the Audio Pro. So overall, again, my recommendation is, if you're looking for a good sounding speaker at this price point or at this kind of size, go for the Audio Pro. It's a real, gem in this kind of price region, on this kind of overall speaker class, as it's outperforming anything in its price category. And the M3 maybe is nice if you have an M5 already and you want to do a multi-room kind of setup, but just for the sound I cannot quite recommend it yet, as it's simply too expensive and just still has some flaws like the bass artifacts. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like or subscribe to the channel. Until then, have a great time and bye bye.